Good morning and welcome back to the Daily Tanya. We had a little break for the holiday season. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Simchas Torah. What a beautiful holiday season we had, Baruch Hashem. But it was so hectic. Unfortunately, I was not able to give the classes this season. But we're happy to be back. And Ezrat Hashem, with Hashem's help, we'll continue now the Daily Tanya. So, today's Sunday, the 25th day of Tishrei. Yesterday we finished the season of the holidays, culminating with Shabbos, Bereshis. After Simchas Torah straight, we went into the Shabbos. The Shabbos, what we read the first Parsha in the Torah. And it was the saying, but that the way we set ourselves up on Shabbos, Bereshis, that's the way the year goes. The Rebbe once explained that on Shabbos Bereshis we read about the beginning. Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. Hashem created in the beginning the heaven and the earth. That when we realize that this is what life is about, when we realize that Hashem creates us every moment, He was the one who created the world. So no matter what level, what situation, what predicament we find ourselves, this gives us strength. We set ourselves up to serve Hashem in no matter what situation, because we know Hashem placed us right here and right now. And that in a way is also connected with the Tanya that we're going to learn today. So we begin today, letter 25 in Igeret Hakodesh. Now this letter the Alter Rebbe wrote in response to some criticism back in the days on the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. So there were those who opposed the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov, and they saw in the book that is called Tzavah Sarivash, literally means the will of the Baal Shem Tov. And Alter Rebbe explains it's not really a will of the Baal Shem Tov because he never wrote a will. It is just a collection of sayings that the students of the Baal Shem Tov recorded, and they compiled it in this book called Tzavah Sarivash. And it's important to know why, because the way the Baal Shem Tov spoke, he spoke in Yiddish, and they wrote it in Hebrew, and sometimes things gets lost in the translation. So there are certain words that may not be precise, but the Alter Rebbe says that nevertheless the contents is absolutely true. And what the issue at hand is what the Baal Shem Tov explained, that Hashem is in everything, even in the lowest places. Now, the Baal Shem Tov explains in general that everything everything that exists in this world exists at first as a holy concept. If we're talking about the concept of emotions, the feelings, it exists first as a feeling of love to Hashem, a feeling of awe of Hashem, and so on. And then it develops into material, worldly things. And the Baal Shem Tov explained that even when a person prays and some Gentile tries to interrupt him, he shouldn't get angry. Because really it's Hashem in him saying him to do this. And this, the Misnag and those who opposed the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, they took issue with this. How could you say that Hashem is in those places? And that's what Alter Rebbe is going to explain in this chapter in general. But specifically what today we're going to learn is Alter Rebbe introduces the concept of what it says in the Zohar, that anyone who gets angry, it is considered like idol worship. And he explains why. Because when you get angry, if something happens to you, somebody did something to you, and you get upset, you get angry. What are you getting angry at? At the fact that somebody did something to you? How dare this happens to me? How dare someone does this to me? So in a way, what you're saying is you're denying really that everything, what is happening to you, comes from Hashem, because that is the truth. Even if it's a person that has free choice, does something to you. So you have to separate between the two things. You have to separate between what happens to you and between the one who did it to you. What happened to you had to happen. What happened to you was Hashem. It was destined by Hashem that this should happen to you. If it wouldn't happen with this person, it would happen with somebody else. When you get angry that the fact that it happened to you, that is in a way idolatry, saying like that person is controlling, not Hashem. What that person did, that's a different sense, a different calculation. If a person caused damage, he has to pay. He can take him to court, of course, and so on. But you separate between the two. And that is why there's no reason to get angry. Getting upset, getting angry about what happened is, like you're saying, this was not supposed to happen to me, but it was supposed to happen. So you accept whatever happened to you, whatever happened, that this was meant from Hashem. For whatever reason I need to fix myself or whatever. And therefore, and the Alter Rebbe brings an example, as we shall see inside. So let's see inside what the Alter Rebbe says. La'avin imrei bina, to comprehend the words of understanding, meaning the words of Torah. Mashakosov Sefer Anikra Tzavas Rivash, stated in the book called Tzavas Rivash, the Testament of Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov. And as we said, the Alter Rebbe explains it's really not a testament and not a will that he wrote. Though in fact it is not at all his will or testament, and he did not ordain anything before his passing. They, meaning the teachings in these books, are merely gleaning of his pure sayings. That were gathered as a compilation after compilation, compilations after compilations. And the compilers did not know how to phrase the teachings exactly. As we said before, the Baal Shem Tov, he spoke in Yiddish and they wrote in Hebrew. But the connotations, however, of the teachings is absolutely true. So the Alter Rebbe goes on, and by the way, Alter Rebbe does not mention the question what the Misnagdim had against the Baal Shem Tov's teaching. And the reason being is the Alter Rebbe does not want even to allude to the fact that there might be a question against the teachings of Baal Shem Tov. What the Alter Rebbe is going to do in this letter is just going to explain the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov in a way that the questions that was asked is automatically answered. So you don't question even the teachings of Baal Shem Tov, because the Alter Rebbe did not want to suggest any separation, any questions about the Baal Shem Tov. Continues the Alter Rebbe and says, and this will be understood by first considering the teachings of our sages of blessed memory. It says in the Zohar, whoever is in a rage resembles an idolater. It's like worshipping idols. Now, the reason for this is clear to those who know understanding, those who understand, those who learn Hasidus especially. Because at the time of his anger, faith in God and his individual divine providence has left him. For were he to believe that what happened to him was God's doing, he would not be angry at all. Now, true, it is a person possessed of free choice that is cursing him and striking him or causing damage to his property. So how could you not get angry? That person has free choice. And therefore guilty according to the laws of man and the laws of heaven for his evil choice. According to Torah, if someone does damage, you got to pay. So the perpetrator, for his part, cannot plead innocence on the grounds that he's merely an instrument in the hands of the divine providence. That's no excuse. So when it comes, that's what the Alter Rebbe says, you got to separate the two. You got to separate what happened to you from who did it. What happened to you had to happen to you. Who did it? He has to be accountable for what he did. Nevertheless, as regard the person harmed, this incident was already decreed in heaven. And God has many agents through whom he can act. And the Rebbe continues, not only was there a decree already in heaven that this should happen to you, but even at the moment that a person does this to you, that person also receives God's energy to be able to do it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to do it. And not only this, that heavenly decree gave permission in principle and made it possible that he suffered injury. But even at the very moment at which the offender strikes or curses him, there is vested in him, in the offender, a force from God and the breath of his mouth, which animates and sustains him. And here the Alter Rebbe brings the example of King David and Shimei. This is the story where King David was, his son Avshalom was rebelling against him. King David had to run away. And then Shimei ben Gera, who was a descendant of King Shaul, he came and he cursed King David. And King David's general said to David, let me behead this dead dog. And King David told him, don't do it. Why? Because God told him to curse. God told Shimei to curse David. When did God say such a thing? And Alter Rebbe explains that the thought that Shimei had in his mind to curse, that is God and putting him that thought in his mind. So ultimately everything what happens, it happens from Hashem. That's what Alter Rebbe says, Ki Hashem Omalei Kalel, as it is written, for God told him curse. And the question is, Ve'eichan Omalei Shimei? Now where did he say to Shimei, where do we find Where do we find it written that God told Shimei to curse David? Only this thought that occurred in Shimei's heart and mind to curse David, that descended from God, who was thus responsible for such a thought entering Shimei's mind. And the breath of his mouth, which animates all the hosts of heaven, this animated the spirit of Shimei at the time he spoke those words to David. Because if the breath of God's mouth had departed from the spirit of Shimei for a single moment, he could not have spoken at all. So here's the message, that really everything is from Hashem. Whatever happens is from Hashem. And that is the same idea, as we said in the beginning, that is Bereshis bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. When Hashem created the heaven and earth, and when we set ourselves up with this state of mind, we begin the year with Bereshis, realizing that Hashem creates and recreates everything at every moment. So no matter what we find, where we find ourselves, whatever happens to us, we do not allow ourselves to fall off the right path and focus on what is our mission in life. We need to continue our mission, to do what Hashem wants from us. Everything else will fall in place also. Yes, of course, we have to do everything possible. And let's again, we didn't do the tzedakah in the beginning of the class, let's do it now. To give tzedakah gedolah, tzedakah shemekareves es hageula, tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. And Hashem help that we should be able to have the immediate redemption, just like we saw when we've seen the whole entire month, the great miracles that Hashem did in Israel. And what happened this Shabbos, also Shabbos Bereshis, Friday night, bombing in Iran, and Baruch Hashem, not a single plane. They all came back safely, and with all of the miracles, we see great miracles that is happening. And may Hashem continue to protect. Unfortunately, some soldiers do fall. We need to continue to ask, and continue to pray. Everyone should be safe, and the hostages should come back safely, and we should have the ultimate redemption very soon. Amen. All the best. Thank you for joining. We'll see you, B'ezrat Hashem, tomorrow.